sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood.
Thank you so much for listening to Sidebar. Yes, it is the former Bexar County DA, Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and George Araujo, scholar, former chemist, and pharmaceutical researcher and director. Today, I want to address a couple of presidents, President Biden and President Trump. But first, I want to ask you guys, have you been having throat problems because of the smoke that's in the air or allergies or something? I feel like...
I clear my throat a lot. and fairly regularly. It's just allergies, I think. It's nothing.
That haze, though, that I think it's like smoke from Mexico or
from
whatever
Canada
it is.
Or what?
No, I don't know. I think this is something closer than that, but it's just been killing me. I hope to make it through today without like coughing all over everybody. So, President Trump and the news that we started last week with the indictment and then the speech after, I do think that we should talk about how he is doing in the polls, how he continues to fundraise, and what that effect has had on his supporters and non-supporters. And then this week, we had a lot of news. Well, we didn't have as much as I thought we would have, but there's been a lot of movement around these bribery allegations with President Biden and his son. And I guess I am really confused because I don't know why the news is concentrating on one person, President Trump, and then not another. That was ironic. Yes, I know.
You know why? Look, the argument is legitimate, or at least to point out to make this point is legitimate. You have President Biden. Imagine if President Trump or any Republican or conservative president acted and responded to allegations like President Biden has, smiling, saying that's a stupid question, walking off, laughing it off, rushing people out of the room because he's not allowed to take questions. It would be 24-hour news. Now, we can say it, we can complain about it, all this other stuff, but it's definitely a double standard. It's a double standard in the media. It appears to be a very blatant double standard in the Department of Justice. It appears to be a double standard on application of law, which is one of, I believe, what President Trump's defense is under the Due Process Clause in the Fifth Amendment and so forth. But so yeah, it's just obvious. It's not even defensible. You can't even defend if somebody could truly question the media and ask them if there was some type of lineup and ask them questions. There's no way they could defend it. There's no way they could defend bank records and allegedly millions of bank records that have millions of dollars going to President Biden allegedly, his brother allegedly, his niece allegedly, his son, of course. And then you have Hunter Biden's laptop that has all kinds of, evidence on it, allegedly, again, because he hasn't been formally charged. And this has been under investigation. Then we have information that the FBI had some type of informant, the quote-unquote credible informant, and I always use that very lightly when I talk about informants, but, credible informant. And then these things have been going on for years. And then this President Trump situation gets, kind of expedited, so to speak. If you're tired of it, then people need to vote differently. If you're tired of it, you need to engage. If you're tired of it, you need to educate yourself. That's the only way to do it, because it's either, we can bitch about it from the corners and say, man, this sucks and this is terrible, or everybody can work within the confines of our law. You have to work within the confines. You have to have clean hands. There's a concept in contract law, is you have to come to the table with clean hands. So we can't complain about disorder and then be disorderly. So we got to work very passionately within the confines of the law and make a difference. But so sorry for the long answer, but you knew the answer already.
I did, but I still don't feel confident in the solution. The reason I don't feel confident in the solution is that the people that were elected to represent me, and I don't feel like they're giving my voice a voice. In other words, why is this happening only to one side? Where are our representatives, and why haven't they moved forward to do anything about what's happening?
What can you do?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think they're doing it. George can chime in on this too. I think they're doing it. I think these different House committees and these investigations are effective. Look, if they got half the media attention that Trump gets, this would have been over. But we said that a long time ago. We said that about COVID. We said that about masks or shots or whatever. If true media was and journalism was taking place, and people really got to engage in the arena of thought and expression and sharing of those thoughts and no censorship, this would have. And I want to talk about this before it's over. Also, Bobby Kennedy was on Joe Rogan this last week, and I just finally finished it. Jeff, thanks for sending it to me. And I texted Bobby. I told him he did a great job, and he responded. I mean, he did a great job, and Joe gave him a platform. You got to watch it.
Watch it. Yes.
Really, I thought it was very good. But if we had those type of, then I don't think we'd be in the situation we are, because people would have information to consider themselves, not be told what to believe, but just here, let me present A, B, C, and D to you. You determine how important A, B, C, and D is to you and to your family, and then you can respond appropriately and support whichever one you want to support.
You asked a question that would probably require a 6-hour show, Karen. So it's a challenging question, but I think we've touched on pieces of the answer to that question. That is that the political and cultural climate in the United States has changed dramatically, particularly in the last 3 years. The seeds have been planted for many, many years, but we've seen those seeds, sprout up into full blossoms here over the last 3 years. And it's just terribly unfortunate. We always talk about the ideals of our legal system, which are equal justice under the law, but we're seeing the exact opposite to now. And the fact that Jack Smith had the gumption to sit up there and say we have one set of laws in this country, and somehow that those laws are going to be enforced equally and equitably, is just utter rubbish and nonsense. And I think Trump, when he came out swinging, and he came out swinging after the second indictment, and now he's $7 million richer, but we'll set that aside. There's been an outpouring of financial support, because I think people are associating this with themselves, Nico. They're not just looking at Trump as some guy out there. He's a billionaire. He's getting, he's got his enemies, yada, yada, yada. That's what happens in politics. People are actually associating this, these prosecutorial indiscretions, let's put it nicely, and they're associating that with themselves. They're going after Trump. I mean, this guy's literally fighting for his political life. If he goes to jail, he'll be in jail for the rest of his life, just on one count, for goodness sakes. So people are making the connection that if they can go after Trump, they can get to Trump, they can get to me. So his political capital is increasing exponentially, as is his financial support. But Trump came out swinging and called Jack Smith a thug and accused Joe Biden of being the most corrupt president in the history of the United States presidency. Is he wrong? So I don't think he's wrong.
Right.
Well, I thought someone sent me, Karen, a piece. I guess it was Tucker's latest, whatever Twitter thing.
I sent it to you guys.
Oh, you did? Okay. Somebody else. I got it from multiple people, but sorry, Karen, you sent it, and I watched it, and it was actually good. I mean, it's thought provoking. I mean, you can disagree. I know people that can't stand Tucker. So be it. I always ask why. I mean, I get it. His laugh is a little squeaky, and he gets corny. Not as much now that he's off Fox. I think he's a lot more resolute, and focused,
Less squeaky.
Yeah, well, that fake laugh drove me insane. But that's here nor there. But it's a good piece, and it makes you think. I mean, it's sarcastic. That's his style, which doesn't bother me at all. But he's making very strong points, and I'd be curious to hear someone retort something like that because he makes a sarcastic claim, then backs it up. It's like, well, if he was trying to be a dictator, it would be this, and this, and then he shows this, and this. So it was. I thought it was effective, and I'm really looking at things, and I'd like to think I do it fairly well, objectively. I have to. I've done it from both sides, prosecutor, defense, and then also even as a Christian, I'm a truth seeker, and it's not my truth. My truth doesn't matter. It's the truth. There is an exclusive truth out there, and we just need to pursue it and unapologetically. And so, it was a good piece. I mean, Biden is an interesting fella to say the least, and the idea of corruption, if these bribery allegations can be substantiated, are legit. I mean, they're making claims. And I hope it's not the Lynn Wood and the Kraken chick. What's her name? What's her name? That a lawyer?
Sidney Powell.
I hope it's not that type of hyperbolic claims. It is either it is what it is or it's not what it's not, and don't make something up. I can't stand that tribalistic.
And it matters who's making those claims, right? I mean, we have the House Judiciary Committee, the House Oversight Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee. We have alignment between Jim Jordan, James Comer, We got Ted Cruz. That's I think is doing a fantastic job. It was practically an interrogation, very effectively done, in Senate hearings this week of the FBI. I mean, it's just levied some very serious charges based on this FBI informant document, as well as Chuck Grassley. Okay, they're claiming some factual things here, and there's alignment. There's alignment between these investigatory committees in Congress. That's not Sidney Powell. I think we can agree that's very different.
I know, I agree. I mean, but I'm just saying that
you're saying the jury's
these are strong. These are strong allegations, and I don't take allegations lightly. I mean, I
very
don't.
Strong,
I mean,
yeah.
the tongue is a powerful weapon. My mom always taught me, and then when it gets into the public, and that's why in Proverbs 6:16, God hates lies. He hates deception because it's character. It's character assassination. It's murder. It's your murdering your character. And it's antithetical to truth, which that's what God stands for, is truth. And so I don't take this lightly. And then me being in politics, people have lied about me for years, and they continue to lie. So be it. But so I'm very careful about my words, and I think you've known me by now, Karen. I really try to choose my words carefully and
Absolutely.
Objectively. So if these are true and they're substantiated, then I think the allegation of being quote unquote crooked, I mean, it holds water if this is it, because they're alleging bribery, bribing,
absolutely.
true bribery. I mean, saying, hey, here's information that
Yes.
can harm the United States
True.
or benefit you for money. The quid pro quo, offer acceptance consideration. I mean, that's significant. Not just, hey, I don't want these records back, because, and we'll dissect some of this stuff in the allegation about obstruction of justice. If Trump actually thought he had the legal authority to keep those documents, then we're getting into what they call the mens rea of the allegation. Was it intentional and knowingly? And if he thought and intended and knew or believed that he could have these under the Presidential Records Act, I mean, you have a challenge to overcome. You have a hurdle.
That's really well said. I think we need to continue on that if we could.
Absolutely.
And delve into some of these other things with Carlson's monologue.
Okay, we'll be right back with more on Sidebar. can go onto Facebook during the show and after the show. What did you say? You love this song?
I did that. I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
Whatever Kirk plays, I like.
I know. Why did I ask that song? Facebook Live during the show, after the show, and you can always find past shows that we've done on the iHeartRadio app. It is under podcast and then Sidebar.
And then I suck at this, but Asalo asked me last night, we were at dinner with him and Edith, his wife, and he said, please mention, if you'd like to support us, to go to sidebartv.com. Is that where it's at?
It is.
Okay, because normally, let me try to do it like Salo. If you want to support us, go to sidebartv.com.
It's a little bit hard to
I hope
find.
he's listening.
I said it to him.
You have to scroll down to the bottom of the page and you'll find it.
I know he's short.
Well, where's
He's
he
not
at?
that short.
Oh, man.
I'd like, with your permission, to continue what Nico said, 'cause that's really sort of I think that's the kind of a crux of the issue. Nico, it's 38 counts, just to get it straight.
I thought it was 37, but...
Well, one of them is against Walton, not him.
Oh, yeah, but it's not
Right.
against Trump. Yeah,
Just-
okay.
right, so 37 against Trump. 31 of them are under this Espionage Act of 1917. And what I think is fascinating about it, I went back and read it. It's literally toilet reading, because that's the dating. But I went back and read it, and it seems pretty clear that, the law seems to clearly state that it's not just a violation, but the intent matters. There has to be an intent to harm U.S. national security. That's critical to the law. There's a reference in the law.
Is it actual harm or is it potential harm? The way, because under the section 793E, section makes it illegal for anyone who has, quote, unauthorized possession of, comma, access to, comma, or control of national defense information such as documents, blueprints, photos, plans, more, and who has, quote, has reason to believe the information could be used to the injury of the United States.
Yeah, excellent. So I don't recall if it was Dershowitz or Turley. We were talking about this last week, and one of them, it may have been Turley, because I don't think Dershowitz ventured into this, but Turley mentioned that the law actually references an intent either to harm the national security of the U.S. or benefit a foreign power. That's how he framed it.
Got it.
And so, I think he, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I guess you and I think, would ask, okay, who exactly is suggesting and on what merit that actually occurred, or that Trump intended to cause that kind of harm?
Right.
And so I think that you have Smith and the government, Department of Justice, heading headlong down this track, using the law, and I'd like to understand it. I think they're using provisions in the law. I'd like to know how they're doing it to make the mishandling or the refusal to return documents.
That's the question, yes. It's not the mishandling.
A crime.
I don't know if it's a mishandling or refusal.
And so that's the harm they're talking about. But that's not the harm that's in the actual statute. So I think that push comes to shove, again, I'll leave it to Nico. This is way, way, way above my pay grade. But it seems to me that they're on weak footing. That the harm they're claiming doesn't have anything to do with the
Presidential
statute.
Records Act is a civil statute. I mean, it was passed, I believe,
Yes.
in 1978 by Congress because there was confusion on what you give back, what you don't give back, and then there's
87.
arguments of 78. 78.
Really?
1978. That's what I've read. And then, the Espionage Act was passed in 1917. I mean, I can double. Yeah, 1978. Granted, Congress passed it in 1978.
Okay. All right. Very good.
But what I'm saying is, that wasn't. What was it intended to? You had presidents that know what they could keep, whether they generated the document, whether they had the document in their possession. It's fascinating to me. I love to hear the experts, because this is what I deal with for a living. You have quote unquote experts that have completely different. Bill Barr thinks the world, that Trump is screwed, he's cooked. Turley seems to be more concerned than Greg Jarrett is, and that Mark Levin is. Andy McCarthy's kind of just trying to analyze it, and I haven't heard too much of his analysis. I mean, you have these quote unquote experts that are all over the place, and Greg Jarrett has done the most. I think the best piece on really defining the issues, and what I've seen so far. Again, I haven't been scour it this week. But it's interesting. This is what we do in a court of law, and why juries are important, because you have different analysis. Now, there's an argument that's going to be made that there's going to be motions to dismiss based off this is not a criminal act. I mean, if it's truly under a civil statute, the Presidential Records Act, well, then they should have filed a motion to compel. Why this extraordinary act, this reaction? You have Bill Clinton in 2012. I mean, there was a Justice Jackson that was appointed by Obama that ruled. I mean, the DOJ has precedents. They said, look, it's under his purview. The archives can't tell me what's presidential or not, what's a document. I mean, there's actual precedents here. It's something about, what is it, sock drawer situation?
Yes.
Where he had tapes and audio and arguably classified and sensitive information. And it was clear the DOJ took a position that you would think can be argued against them now that would support President Trump. And it was so we have precedent. We have some clarity.
That's good.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I mean, but it begs the question, then why move forward? The DOJ, your DOJ, and previously took a very different position. I'm curious to hear the distinguishing factors. I'm not saying that I personally have analyzed this, but just as a critical thinker that's actually in this space, I'm curious to hear the distinction between the 2012 situation with President Clinton at the time, and then today with President Trump at the time. Then you contrast that with Hillary Clinton. Nobody searched her house. She had 100 documents on a server. She destroyed things. She destroyed BlackBerries. That's not, I mean, people blow that off because it's been mentioned so many times. It's kind of a big deal. She was a Secretary of State. You have President Biden was a senator at the time and a vice president, not the president. What he does now would be different versus what he did before. And so this unequal justice under the law, I made a point last week that that's not a defense to the statute, but it's a defense under the Constitution, or at least it can be made under due process and unequal justice of application of law. It's a fascinating legal case that will take deep legal analysis and then courts to rule eventually. But it is horrible for our country. I think it's horrible, and it's a horrible precedent. And the Democrats or anyone that is supporting this is not thinking down the street. They're not. They're thinking immediate. They're thinking with emotion. They're not thinking about the wellness of the country and what's better for all people, to include future Democrats. How about them apples? To include, look, what do I always say, Karen? Be careful of the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it. Be very, very careful.
This is just loaded with landmines. This is why I think his poll numbers are going up. People are associating this with themselves. They're recognizing that, holy crap, that could be me. That could be me. And that's exactly right. We've been making that case here forever. This isn't just about Trump. And Trump's been saying, hey, man, I'm really at the point of the spear here, right? They're coming after you, ultimately. And they have been. I mean, there's been a decided unequitable pursuit, prosecutorial pursuit of Trump supporters, particularly individuals that are high up in government and have been high up in government. I don't think that's a news flash. I think most people can Google that. Nico, what I thought was also concerning beyond the 31 counts, that there were these 6 counts that had to do with withholding evidence or withholding documents, making false statements. What Turley had mentioned, and he mentioned as if it was damning. He didn't explain why it was damning. Was it damning to Trump? Because he gets into statements that were made by Trump's legal counsel, Evan Corcoran.
Oh, that gets into the attorney-client privilege.
Exactly
that's
right.
A big deal, man.
And that's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
So he really does believe that that's going to be part of the defense here.
Yes.
Is that you? And I wanted to ask you this because I know this hits a raw nerve with you.
Yep.
If it doesn't, it should. Excuse me.
It does.
The attorney-client privilege, Nico can wax eloquent about
in our
this.
justice
It's
system.
supposed to protect the confidentiality or communications between individuals and their lawyers. So if LaHood Norton is representing Jeff over there for whatever, that would never happen because Jeff walks between the raindrops. But so they're not allowed to disclose.
Yeah.
If I say anything that's
No, you're on.
if they're not allowed to disclose oral or written communications with their clients,
To anybody,
unless they're granted permission by the client to do so.
Correct, unless they waive a conflict or there's a crime fraud exception that can be proven, meaning that the lawyer actually is engaging or trying to further a crime, not counsel on a crime, not give counsel on what to avoid so you don't get yourself into a further pickle. I mean, defense lawyers are asked questions all the time. Can I do X, Y, and Z? No, you can't. And let me tell you why. It's going to make your situation worse. So were they thinking of doing it? Arguably, maybe. But that's why you get counsel from your lawyer so you don't get yourself into a crap hole any worse. And so that's, from what I understand, that's the kind of the attorney-client privilege that a judge ruled on and said, no, you have to testify. And so Trump allegedly asked questions, well, can I just do X, Y, or Z and do this? And the lawyer gave him advice. I don't think they're making a claim that the lawyer was trying to engage in future conspiracies to break. I mean, a lawyer doesn't have an attorney-client privilege if you're part of an ongoing or future conspiracy to break the law. But a lawyer can consult on questions that the client asked them, and that was broke. That's a big deal. I'm telling you, this is a huge deal.
I think that's right. I think this is massive. You think about that. A lot of what the government is using, because I'm going to go back to Nico's term of mens rea, the state of mind. A lot of what they're using to talk about or to go after Trump in terms of his state of mind comes from those privileged attorney-client communications.
You're prosecuting for thoughts. You don't prosecute for conversations or thoughts. You can think things and you can ask about things. You have to act on them. Now, if you say something, go shoot that SOB, that's different. That could be prosecuted because you're encouraging, furthering a crime of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon or, God forbid, murder or capital murder. That's completely because you're instructing. But just to think things through and to critically think and to ask questions of your lawyer, can I do A, B, and C? No, you can't. And then and have that discussion. That's my understanding of what was broken here in the attorney-client privilege.
I don't know if this is the same, but when you talk about intent, I keep thinking of January 6th. Mm-hmm. When Trump was up there talking to, the people down there and saying, this is going to be peaceful, we're going to do this. His intent was not for them to go
it's pretty clear. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And anyone that's subjective
but
about
they still went after him for that.
And they may still do it for that, too. They're talking about going after him for that. I mean, George made a comment months and months ago saying they were going to try to stop Trump at all costs. And he was right. I mean, a lot of people, we were suggesting that. George said it on the show a number of times. I mean, because this is what they're doing with this is a little bit more sophisticated, but it's kind of like the Alvin Bragg situation.
Absolutely.
Where they're taking a civil situation and they're trying to bring in the Espionage Act, it seems like, which there's a lot of legal arguments on whether the most recent statute trumps the older one, and this is the Presidential Records Act. It's exclusive to whoever the president is. So when people say things like, well, everybody's going to be held to the same standard under the law. Well, no, not under this act. Under this act, this applies to President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, President Biden at some point, any president. So it doesn't apply to everybody. It doesn't apply to vice presidents or secretaries of state or senators or congresswomen or men to presidents. So no, you can't say that. So every president needs to be held to the same standard under this act. Got it. Now, espionage is something different, but no president has ever been. I mean, do we really think if the Professor Turley is correct, which I'm not arguing with, he's not or not, but about saying that there has to be actual harm versus potential harm. That, to me, from a legal analysis, is the distinction. But that still doesn't mean that President Trump is guilty of that. Because, again, if you get into his mens rea, his mental intent, what he thought, working through his lawyers, having open discussions, this is not in the secret night or don't let anyone know. I mean, they were having open discussions on what needed to be returned or not. And if you're talking about the Presidential Records Act and dealing with the archives, then why didn't you do a motion to compel or something equivalent, go to a judge and say, President Trump, you have to return this. Well, I'm going to appeal this and I'm not going to return this. It's locked up, it's secured, it's not going. And then when you go to that exercise versus this, while he's a candidate, it reeks, of course, of interference. I mean, so if you're objective, you have to at least take these things serious. If you're really going to make an objective analysis, you can't just deny something because it's against your tribe. And we talked about that last week. I think that's what's happening, tribalism.
Okay, we've got to stop
That
again.
felt like a short segment.
About a minute. That was actually 15, but we're going to come back and continue our talk on Sidebar. WOAI. Just a reminder that we have Facebook Live during the show, and after the show, we'd love for you to join us. So we want to continue talking about President Trump. And I keep on thinking about if this were in Russia, if Putin had somebody that was trying to run against him, suddenly the guy gets poisoned and either dies, can't come back, to life as a candidate. It feels like we are going into that same lane when it comes to Trump, because they're trying everything. You don't think that it's going to go down to somebody trying to hurt him, do you?
That could never happen.
Or
right, Nico?
anybody that has to do with Trump's side. I fear for that.
Well, I mean, what's probable and possible are two different things. I mean, look, it's a concern. Everybody should be concerned about that. I mean, any former president should be concerned about their safety. Any person in an authoritative position that's kind of a hostile position where you have, arguably former district attorneys, former county attorneys, former prosecutors, former district court judges, former or current federal judges. I mean, anybody in that position, you have to think, objectively about that. So yes, of course it's possible. I mean, I pray against that. I pray against that against any president. I don't care who it is. I mean, again, we have to get outside this tribalism and start defending ideas. I mean, I'm not a Trump supporter for his personality or for anything. I support ideas. If somebody would take up the mantle of ideas that I think are best for this country, I'm going to support that person. It really has little to do with Trump, other than he's kind of a battering ram that it seems like this country may need right now. I don't think he's the future. I think his boldness may be, but I don't think his style is. But he's a battering ram. And look, there's a strong opposition to the foundation of this country. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and freedom and things of this nature. And I mean, just look at what's happening from parents in California coming together saying these are our kids. I mean, President Biden keeps doubling down on your children are ours. I mean, just these fundamental inalienable rights that we argue. You can't tell me what, minus, abusing your child sexually or physically. That's completely different. The statutes are there to protect children. But it's really a battle for, ironically, when President Biden said during the campaign trail it was a battle for the soul of this country, soul for George and I, meaning the mind, will, and emotions of this country. Yes, it is a battle for the soul of this country, because this is a debate. It's an internal civil war. George and I have said many times before, Karen, that we've been in a civil war of ideas for decades now. We've had a civil war of ideas that have come to a head because a battering ram like Trump came on the scene and just peeled the Band-Aid off and the scab off, and then things were exposed that had been happening undermining this country's foundation for a long time. And that's just an analysis you have to make, and then you have to decide what set of ideas do you want governing this country. You have Bobby Kennedy here that's running under the same umbrella that Biden is, but has very different ideas. Arguably, people would say Bobby's really a Republican today because that blue dog Democrat doesn't exist anymore. He's the Democrat of his dad and his uncle and many other Democrats before, and many people that are, and Bill Clinton and people that were in office when they were in office, so to speak. But Bobby Kennedy truly believes in the foundation of this country. But many people will argue with it, and you're not going to make it through a Democrat primary because those ideas are not what this platform supports anymore. So it's a battle of ideas,
But can we make it through to have a movie done with Dustin Hoffman, like Watergate? Are we going to make it through to that? I mean, it can go two ways. A movie done, or we're not going to have any movies. History
is written by the winners, right? They often say, let's see how this ends up. I'm an optimist. I really am, and I'm an optimist because I'm fundamentally, primarily because I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. I consider him my Lord and Savior. I believe in the gospel, and I'm a person of hope. So I'm an optimist. And America, as we've argued many times, is its legal, its cultural institutions have been forged in that optimism as well, because our cultural worldview has traditionally been Judeo-Christian in nature. So we're optimists. Americans are fundamentally, that's what's in our DNA, not racism, like Barack Obama claimed. What's in our DNA is optimism. So I believe there's going to be a great outcome. What I worry is that it's not going to be anytime soon. That's what worries me. And I worry that we're going to have to go through a lot of pain and suffering to get back to where we were. And that worries me. It worries primarily for my children. I care about the country that my kids are going to grow up in.
But the reason why it's going to take a while is because we've lost so many generations. When you think about the moral rot that's happened in our country, I'm a hopeful realist. So I'm a hopeful realist. I mean, To go to the book of Judges, I mean, Israel went through a bunch of crap for years, because they wouldn't learn their lesson. And they kept going in this vicious cycle. And the Lord allowed them to suffer because pain is a good motivator. As George and I say, and George got this from somebody, one of his professors or somebody, when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing, then we change. So pain is a good motivator with your health, with a relationship, financially. Pain is a good motivator, and God uses pain. I hope it. But I pray. My wife and I pray literally every night is that the Lord is patient with us, and that people wake up. And when I see parents standing up, when I see people, when I heard about thousands of people protesting outside of Dodger Stadium, that encourages me.
That was big.
That encourages me. I mean, so you have the LA Dodgers that are going to give a community award to people that hate Christians essentially and Catholics and things of this nature, and then they change their mind, and you're going to give them a
celebration of Pride Month.
Yeah, I mean, all this other crap, and thousands of people came together in LA. God bless them. Good for them. Look, we've got to work within the confines of law, but we've got to be vocal. And so parents, right?
Yeah, I want to analyze that if I can, with your permission for a moment here, because let's delve into that. So see, I take hope from that as well. I do, and when we see a surge of parents showing up at school boards, I mean that man, I walk a little bit taller. That's encouraging to me because that gives me a sense of the health of the soul of the country. It's still there. I mean, the vast majority of this country is overwhelmingly conservative. Here's what our opponents are absolutely counting on, and I have to say they're correct. They are. We are not going to do what they do. We're not going to pull an Antifa. We're not going to pull a BLM. We're not going to destroy public property. We're not going to overturn cars. We're not going to destroy police precincts. We're not going to set cities on fire. We're not going to do that. The January thing was a joke. The violence element, and I go back to Carlson did an excellent presentation on Fox News, and I would suspect this is one of the many reasons why he was ousted, because he dared tell the truth about things in ways that Fox News is simply not prepared to do. But January 6th was overwhelmingly peaceful. There were elements of violence, there's no question about it, that were unacceptable. There's not a true conservative out there who thinks that's a good idea. Our opponents know that we are not going to do what they do. That's a strength for us, and that's a weakness right now. Because here's the problem. They've mined every single major United States institution. They've managed to weaponize media. They've managed to weaponize our academic institutions. They've weaponized corporations. U.S. corporate boards are largely weaponized. We've talked about every one of these things here, Nico, in detail. And now, which is really the crux of our discussion today, they have managed to weaponize our Department of Justice. And they have weaponized the presidency, and they've weaponized the cabinetry of the presidency, and they have weaponized previously apolitical bureaucratic institutions of the United States government. So you have lots and lots of people who are showing up right now to show their dissent in front of Dodger Stadium, fantastic parent school boards. But here's the question. To whom, what, or which do people who care about the law turn to? Where are the American institutions that they're going to turn to? Oh, I know what you're thinking out there. Thank goodness that there's a strong American evangelical church community to turn to, right, Nico?
Whoops.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, they've managed to even weaponize that. So, and this is all very deliberate. No, this didn't happen overnight. As you often say, Nico, this isn't a 2-week thing. But this happened over time. Our opponents know that we are surrounded on all sides. They know that.
Well, you've identified the problem, so what's the solution?
And they know that we're not going to do that. I mean, we're not going to storm the Bastille.
Okay.
So the question is, what do we do? And this is why we always keep coming back to, we have to literally surge the American electoral process. We do. It's that kind of a moment. I don't give a rat's ass if you've got a problem with Trump's demeanor. I've got a problem with Trump's demeanor sometimes. This is that kind of a moment. It really is. If you don't think what has just happened in Brazil could happen here and is happening right now, and by the way, if you don't think that this administration, with the help of, yes, our so-called law enforcement institutions, because there's plenty of evidence out there, the media won't go near it with a 10-foot barbecue fork, but I'll talk about it. If you don't think this administration was actively involved in undermining the elections in Brazil that put Luis Inácio Lula in power and ousted John Bolsonaro, I've got a bunch of classified documents in my garage that I'd be happy to sell you. And by the way, I won't wave it around in your face like Trump did. I'll actually laminate them for you. I mean, come on. This is only going to be a success for us, Nico, it seems to me, if we go back to what you often talk about. Take no conversation lightly. Every conversation is about persuasion. Mm-hmm. Every individual matters. It really does matter. If you have any kind of an audience anywhere with anyone, please use that audience. Become persuasive, learn the facts, understand what's going on, influence your neighbors, get working on that. I think that we really, Trump's right, and I hope we are successful with mail-in balloting initiatives in this country, Nico. Even with ballot harvesting, to the extent it's legal, we need to do it better than they do. Independents need to get off their ass. Honestly, the polling's looking really good in terms of independence, and join this movement. We have to get back to constitutional order. If we don't, then we are looking at Brazil. Go ahead, bud. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, that's great analysis. But we need to be persuasive. The key word is persuasive, not annoying. You can be passionate, but there's way too many people that are arguing the quote unquote conservative movement that are just annoying, because they're speaking in an echo chamber and they're feeling good about them and the 15 people that they're bitching to. But that's not what we need. We need true persuasion. We need a command of the facts. We need a command of the Constitution, and we need to pray about a persuasive way to change people's minds. Because if it comes down to the ballot box, you instead of storming the Bastille, right? We need to storm the ballot box. That's to be our storming, and we have to do more things like this, and go to school board meetings and peacefully protest things that we disagree with. So if that's the norm, then that protests weren't.
Amen.
We have to start doing these things, and we can't be afraid to be called names or this and that, the other, and then be diligent and properly handle truth. So that's what we need to do, and then start changing the young people's minds, because we're one or two generations from this country being done. That's not a hyperbolic statement.
Okay, we'll be right back with more on Sidebar. 1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. We have one more segment that's on WOAI, but please join us afterwards on Facebook Live. We'll continue. We were going to talk about Biden and what's going on with him right now. All of the allegations against him and bribery with his son. I keep on thinking, just like you both always say, well, where's the proof? Is it going to stand up in court? Why isn't it going forward? Who? Yeah,
I have the same question. I want to direct to Nico because I'm really concerned about putting Sidney Powell and this FD 1023 in the same bucket, because what we see here that we didn't see at that time with Linwood and Sidney Powell and the dropping the Kraken and all that nonsense that I think Tucker Carlson effectively disheveled. Look, there's unanimity. Did you ever think that you would see the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nancy Mace on the same team?
We talked about that last week. But they're both Republican, but yes, they're on different spectrums of the Republican.
And they both came out pretty much, well, and Ana Paulina Luna, who I really like. She's the Republican representative from Florida. She's pretty vocal, and I really, really like her. But they've come out and they said, hey, the foreign national, there's the informant, the FBI informant, an FD 1023 in that document. And then there's the foreign national. The foreign national isn't just some dude. It's Mykolaiv Lochevsky. And this guy is a Ukrainian minister, a former Ukrainian minister. He's the head of their former head of their natural resources department. And he used corruption in Ukraine to get gas licenses for his cronies, by the way, while he was in power. But he's also the former founder of Burisma Holdings. He's not just some schmo. And he held the company until 2011. And then a bunch of Cypriot investors, guys from Cyprus, bought it. It's a weird triangle between the Biden family, and this is all rather decomposed in this document. There's a real solid fact pattern there. And so it establishes this triangle between the Biden family, Hunter Biden, who was on the board. That's inarguable.
Right.
As well as, you've heard the name Devin Archer, who was an associate of Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's earning $83,000 per month while his father, the vice president of the United States, is in office. And we are going over there. Remember, Biden went over there. And this is what's hilarious, if it wasn't so sad, is that he's going over there because we're concerned about Ukrainian corruption. And so Biden's over there preaching on Ukrainian corruption while practicing it very well. And so this triangle between Lochevsky and Burisma Holdings and the Biden family is very well established in these documents. And so the fact pattern's pretty thick. And so you have this alignment now between investigatory committees, both in the House and the Senate. And so there's a lot of smoke here. And the Department of Justice is where on it exactly?
Well, there's another special counsel looking into these things.
And we've heard so much.
Yeah,
right?
and independent counsel
what I was
versus
gonna say.
special counsel is a kind of a big deal. So when there's a district attorney and there's a potential conflict of prosecution of the district attorney's office with a citizen that's going to be accused, there's an attorney pro temp appointed by the judge, not a special prosecutor. Those terms are used wrong most of the time. A special prosecutor is brought in by a DA's office that maybe doesn't have the resources to handle or expertise in a very complex area of law. So you bring in a quote unquote expert and they still work under the DA, the prosecutorial agency. They're not independent. They're a special prosecutor, but they're still a prosecutor under the authority of the elected DA. An attorney pro tem is when the DA says, look, the whole office is conflicted out. You can't firewall this office out. So they're going to bring in a pro temp attorney, a DA, a special, not special prosecutor, but a separate prosecutor that has their own authority. They can dismiss, negotiate, plea bargain, prosecute, go to trial. They can do anything with that case, legally and ethically, of course, that any DA can do. And they don't answer to the elected DA because there's a true conflict. But a special counsel works under Garland, right? I mean, so you're still, and that's been the criticism I've heard, that how much did Garland know and how much did Biden know because Garland works for Biden? I mean, how do you wall yourself off and that hasn't been answered. Garland hasn't said anything that I've seen. I mean, he's not putting the country at ease. I mean, the silence is deafening. I mean, he has a right to remain silent too, but he's not being accused of a criminal act, so it doesn't apply to him. And
yeah,
so
I like that.
You understand?
I like the way
But
you
why
frame
would
that, 'cause I
even the
think that's true.
FBI not comment and say, well, we're protecting our sources? What?
Well, Chris Comey didn't believe that he's there talking with Hillary Clinton. He essentially laid out how Hillary Clinton could be prosecuted, but no reasonable prosecutor would do that. Well, that's not your job. You're the law enforcement branch. The law enforcement branch gives a recommendation and then passes it over to the prosecutorial branch. It happens under state law all the time. Under the federal system, the prosecutors are involved early on, much earlier on than the prosecutorial agency and the state system. But there's a recommendation placed over, but it's not him. It's not the law enforcement branch's decision to prosecute or not. But what he essentially did, this in my humble opinion, this is me talking now, Comey said, well, I just made myself the defendant, Hillary Clinton's witness, because no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute this. Then now you call them as a witness in trial. So, but this is where the unequal implication of the law.
I think we have enough, even though, because here's the issue, that foreign national is missing. That's kind of a problem here. Mykolaiv Zalewski, it's like, where is he? Last we heard, he was in Monaco in 2019, and he bought citizenship in Greece in 2017. But this informant is saying that Lechevsky told him that he had 17 recordings as an insurance policy.
That's a big deal.
For for this pay to play scheme. So the question is, do we really need all that? Because we have Joe Biden on tape basically explaining how, because remember in 2016, Lechevsky was under suspicion for money laundering and public corruption. Remember that triangle? And so he was under investigation. And there was this prosecutor you brought up last week, Victor Shokin, and he was investigating. And so he was forced to leave by the Ukrainian government due to pressure that was talking about it in 2018.
It's the weirdest thing.
So,
talk about
and in detail,
arrogant,
right? He threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid from Ukraine if the Ukraine government did not fire Shokin. He bragged about it in 2018. So you have this document, you have the informant, and I get what Nico's saying. Informants. I got it. But he's been there since 2010. He's contributed to a lot of investigations that have come to conclusion. There's a fact pattern that's pretty well developed here. You've got 3 investigatory committees that I know of, or that I've read about, that are looking at it in Congress. This isn't Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood. So there's a lot here to go on.
There's definitely a lot here.
And yet they spend their time on speculative legal theories going after
the informant has been paid $200,000 over a period of time as well. So that
by the FBI, right?
Yes. So that gives you motive. If I'm going to play defense attorney for President Biden. So, but it's not just the informant. It's corroborating evidence you have to put together. So the informant is a piece of the puzzle. He's not the puzzle. I would not rely on just an informant. And you have to have some evidence, something else. Remember, you have to rise your case to beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest standard in our justice system. And in the federal system, there's actually a definition to it. In the state system, there's not a definition anymore, but it's the highest standard. So all that to say is, this has been going on for years.
It has.
This is not, and then we know that now that was kept secret or down low, but now we know that this has been something in their purview for years. And then this Trump thing, it seems to have been expedited. Again, that's a legitimate argument under due process and unequal justice of the law. That's more of a constitutional argument. So what many experts believe, or at least a number of experts believe, there's going to be a number of pretrial motions filed. Jack Smith is asking for a speedy trial. That's the citizen accused right. It's not the government's right. And that's very rare that the government asks for a speedy trial. I've never heard in the state court you don't ask for a speedy trial. You're just ready to trial.
It's not suspect at all.
Yeah.
It's the citizen's right to a speedy trial if they want it. And I don't think Trump should take his time and analyze everything. So you have to look at all these things. And so this guy Jack Smith I would ask the question, why do you want a speedy trial? And Trump shouldn't fall for it though. He's going to take his time. He's going to look at these issues. But these pretrial motions are going to be filed. They'll be ruled on. They're called interlocutory motions. Those motions, if they are ruled against Trump, he can appeal those. And this is just going to be a process. So this is not going to, I don't see in any normal set of circumstances how a case moves through court systems, how this gets tried before the election. And then, as we all know, I think constitutionally, Trump can serve being convicted. he can serve from anywhere.
And I would argue, and this is a question for those who are listening, and if you're listening to Sidebar this morning, we're very grateful for that. Thank you for that. What did you say, Nico? SidebarTV.com, right? This is from Salo, who is here in spirit. Check us out on SidebarTV.com. But I would ask the question, do you think that, because constitutionally it's pretty well established. You need to be 35 years of age and you need to be a natural born citizen of the United States. The Constitution is pretty clear about that. Okay. So let's say question for you, if Trump is elected president, let's say he's even been convicted. I don't think he will be. I think on appeal, this thing will fall apart, but whatever. So let's assume Trump is convicted, becomes president, Nico. So does it become a practical argument? Well, he can't be president from behind bars. Is he really going to be behind bars? How are we going to handle a Secret Service issue?
Secret Service,
it's 12 guys in a prison cell with him?
Yeah, it's just a mess.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, no one's thought it through, of course.
Asking for a friend.
No one's thought it through. But all that said, please join us on the after show. We're gonna continue to talk about some of these topics, but I wanted to take at least a couple of moments to talk about something very dear to my heart. It's Father's Day. I call it Daddy.
yeah.
I call it Daddy's Day on Sunday. You know, I often say that most men can be a father. It just means you're a sperm donor. But it takes a special man to be a daddy. And the daddy's role can be fulfilled by an uncle, a tío, that maybe a biological dad's not in the life, or grandpa, or even a family friend can fill the daddy role, or an adopted family that legally has brought in somebody, or a foster parent family, or a foster daddy. So, and we are desperately in need of daddies in this country. I think the data spells it out. And for me, I make the argument that biblically minded daddy that understand their duty and their example as God, the architect of all life, shows us what it's like to give unconditional, what we call agape love, sacrificial love, to sacrifice and bankrupt heaven because he's making an appeal and reaching out to us for our betterment, ultimately. And so I just think that men should be honored this week, and I believe on Mother's Day, mommy should be honored. You can't compromise that. You can't substitute that. And no, a man can't be a mom and a woman can't be a dad. And the reason why there's a complementary role that God created is because we need both. We need both characteristics to nurture and raise up a child, as Proverbs 22:6 says, in the way they shall go. And when they get older, they will not depart from it. So happy Daddy's Day to all the daddies out there. Thank you for doing what you do. Mommies, I hope you honor them and give them honor this weekend, that they deserve it, and encourage them, because we all need encouragement in life. And God bless you guys, and hope to see you in the after show.
Okay. We never even discussed what we were going to talk about, but you mentioned after we went off the air, George, about the latest polls when it comes to Trump and Biden. Wait, What happened to DeSantis? What's going on with him?
Yeah, that. No, Trump's doing better than DeSantis. He's pulling away from DeSantis. Look, before the indictments, I think he was an average of 20 points ahead of DeSantis. DeSantis was,
there you go. He's going to get mad at you too, just like Kayleigh McEnany.
Yes.
average. I used the word average. She should have used that word.
She should have used that.
So I'm just kidding. Because she should have known the wrath of Trump. She could probably feel him while she was talking.
Oh, I'm sure she just blew it off because she
I
probably
couldn't
got.
I couldn't help that.
No, but she.
But that's
don't
part
you
of the
know that she probably got yelled at 1,000
low-hanging
times.
fruit, baby. But an average of 20 in a town average. I mean, it's 30 points now. It went up considerably, and he's a money making machine. Again, I think the people are associating this political prosecution with themselves, as they should be, because that's what they're actually seeing something that they could only read about a few years ago. If you go back and you look at Stalinist history and the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, let's say post Lenin, of course. There was a special prosecutor, I'll call him. I'm being nice. His name was Lavrenti Beria, who worked for Stalin, and he said, show me the man, and I'll show you show me the man, and I'll show you the crime.
Right.
That he's the one that coined that phrase. I call him a special prosecutor, but he's really the head of Stalin's police. That tells you a little bit about the mindset of this guy. That's the kind of justice system, injustice system that we see ourselves kind of easing into. We're normalizing it now. And that's what these guys are trying to do. They're trying to normalize that. And I mentioned in my little rant earlier about how there's a sort of a cross-departmental weaponization in American culture and American government. And they're trying to make people tired, Nico. They're fatiguing people. People are coming to a point where it's like, what's the use? Who cares what I think? We're outnumbered anyway. They're everywhere. Can we go anywhere during the COVID hysteria phase where we weren't told to mask up? I mean, is everybody nuts? Right? It's that sense. This has been going on for a while. It's fatiguing the American public. It's giving you the sense that don't even bother. You've already lost. You should be exhausted. And I'm here to tell you guys, that's bullshit. Be careful with that. What do you say about fatigue?
Makes cowards of men.
It makes cowards of men.
Eek.
But first, it does what it's designed to do. It just makes you tired. This is all very deliberate. Be very, very, very careful. Don't fall for that.
And then on top of that, you read studies about how, and I'm just making this up, 90% of Americans since COVID have now started taking antidepressants and anxiety medication and what have you. And that in itself I'm not saying that people don't need medicine. Some people do. But it kind of gives you this
I think a lot
attitude.
less than people think. I mean, what do we do without, is it called SSRI drugs, right? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
But does it change reality? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, no, but the side effects, when you look at violent behavior, suicidal tendencies, things of this nature, depression, those are legitimate side effects of SSRI drugs.
There are legitimate studies showing that the very things that SSRIs are designed to stop are actually being induced. This is a problem long term. So, man, we're medicated as hell, aren't we?
Yes.
Well, look, I was dropping, I said this, I think I said this to two people this week. So when we were dropping the girls off, I don't know if I told you, George. I did tell you, I think. We were dropping the girls off at camp a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And you pull in, they're all excited, welcome to camp, blah, blah, blah. And so we were dropping off Leah first. She was dropped off at one camp and then Maya at another one. And I come around the corner and there's someone there and I see these two long lines. And one of them was really long. I mean, one long line. Sorry, not two long lines. Two lines. One of them was really long. I go, which line do I go in? I asked the young lady that was helping direct people. She goes, well, this is the line for medication and nurse.
Wow.
That line's just a regular line. And the regular line had no one in it. Cars were just driving through. And there was a long-ass line. Now, I'm not being critical. I'm just being observatory. I'm just saying, I'm observing that's not... These are, I mean, we were dropping off.
What does that say?
We were dropping off our 10-year-old. We were dropping off our 10-year-old. And so we are the most medicated country, advanced country. We're sick as shit, all the, from shots to vaccines to medication to this, to that, it used to be illegal to advertise medication. Now it's, of course, they do it every third commercial.
Yeah.
Not that I watch TV anymore, but I'm just saying it's.
Yeah.
What does that tell you when there's so much in the design of the body through lifestyle, through supplementation if you're missing something, through eating and what you ingest in your body? We put better shit in our cars than we do our body. And so when we look at all these things, this is real. And the COVID thing, I'm giving you more context. Sorry, Karen. After the COVID was even worse.
Yeah.
People were depressed. They felt isolated. They felt different. I mean, suicide rates went up.
Yeah.
I mean, so what did we really accomplish? And then we found out that it was not what people said it was. Now the truth is coming out. Now we're seeing that we didn't need lockdowns. Now we're seeing that those masks didn't do crap for you. And George and I talked about that, and you, Karen, and George. That's how George got stuck with us, right?
day one.
We brought him in.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
We brought him in. No, as an expert. No, I'm not gonna say it. We brought him in from an expert.
like herpes.
Yeah. But we brought him in to talk about the PPE equipment, personal
know.
protection equipment, and true masking and what it would do, since he worked as a chemist on the bench and doing experiments. I mean, and then you got stuck with us. But so all I'm saying is we're seeing this, whether it was ivermectin, whether it was hydroxychloroquine, whether it was.
I know, but even the truth is now causing people to be more depressed and more anxious about what do we believe.
I got it. I'm with you, but I'm trying to support your point.
Yeah,
is from a net, and it's obvious. I mean, it's a rhetorical statement. From a net, how do we benefit from how we handled COVID? And history will show that it was embarrassing. And people that passed away, they didn't have to pass away. Completely, we know that for a fact now. And no one's going to be held accountable because the fact checkers didn't fact check well, or I don't know what they were looking at when they were fact checking. I mean, other people are being censored. These fact checkers are not being.
But they're still lying about the
I
facts.
get it, because there's no consequences. This is the point, Karen. There's no consequences. Why George's point earlier that people have to not just what is it, attack or what did you say, the Bastille?
Storming the Bastille.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the phrase.
By the way, that's coming up July 14th. So keep that in mind.
I'll put that on my calendar. But when storming the Bastille, we got to storm the election booth,
Careful.
right?
Careful. DOJ might come after you.
You've got to go and you have to vote.
All kidding
Period, end of
aside,
story.
though, you say the DOJ can come after you.
I know. It's
when
not
we went
that
off
funny.
the air
It's not a joke.
last week,
I deal with that every day. That's not a joke.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, it's very real. I mean, look at the
We used to be
Catholic.
able to laugh about it.
Look at the Catholic advocate who was just praying for people outside of across the street from an abortion clinic, and then some volunteer rushes across the street yelling at him and his kid, who's 11 or 12, and he says, "Don't get it out of my kid's face. No, F you," all this other crap, and he felt his boy was threatened. So he just shoved him, didn't knock him out, didn't punch him, didn't kick him, which all that would have been appropriate in my opinion, from what I heard. He just shoves him. Appropriate force based off what he was dealing with. Local authorities show up. I'm not doing anything. I'm not arresting this dude. You did what? No. You came across the street. You're yelling at his kid. That's a young kid. What do you think you're doing? You threatened him. He pushed you. So be it. That's it. Bye. Local prosecutor, after they turned the case over, said, "I'm not prosecuting this case. Get out of here." The DOJ picks up the case, and by God's grace, thank you, Lord, that a jury acquitted him.
But I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with anything. But the Marine, what's his name? Daniel Perry.
Daniel Penny.
He was indicted.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay. Everybody was saying, so what does this do for the future? The next time you're on a train and there's a Marine sitting next to you.
Bigger than Penny, right? As we mentioned, this is about they're going after the right of self-defense. I mean, that's really what they're going after here.
Well, think about the right to, don't forget your thought, please, George. The right to self-defense here and the right to attorney-client privilege with Trump. Think about it. So just let that sink in. I going after everything.
I have a lingering question on that for you. Please don't let me forget about that, because I want to ask about that whole situation, because that kind of freaks me out a little bit, and I want to vet it a little bit. But Representative Clay Higgins from Louisiana has issued a warning. And it gets back to us saying this is really not a joke. He's issued a warning about, hey, American conservatives, do not fall for the trap. If you choose to protest against former President Donald Trump's arrest, be very, very, very careful. He's a member of the Homeland Security Committee. And here's what I wrote, because I didn't want to get him wrong, so I was trying to leaf through to find his quotation. He said, "My fellow conservatives, the DOJ FBI doesn't expect to imprison Trump. They expect to imprison you. They want J6 again in Miami.
and in your city and in mine. They want MAGA conservatives to react to this perimeter probe, and in so doing, set yourselves up for targeted persecution and further entrapment. They want to intercept a busload of conservatives en route. He's talking about Trump's anticipated, first his arrest, if you will, and then his comments afterwards. So in anticipation, he's saying they want to intercept a busload of conservatives en route to protest and create conflicts during the stop. They are hoping to provoke conservative Americans. Don't fall for the trap. Maintain your family. Live your life. Live free and pay close attention and make your voice heard. Don't become an incarcerated pawn in the agenda-driven DOJ FBI strategy to oppress conservatives across America. Wow.
Is that guy still alive? Is he in jail? Where is he?
Today's the 17th, right? He made the statement June 11th. I mean, what the hell is a United States representative doing making a statement like that? Any other time in American history, this guy would have been put in a straitjacket. Now we look at him and say, wow, he's so bold and insightful.
Right.
What's changed? What's changed? This is a sadness, okay? And then to Nico's point earlier, that this weaponization isn't confined to this. It's everywhere. It's cross-departmental. It's cross-sector. What we just had here with COVID was an outright attack on United States civil liberties. It really has been. I mean, this was a preparation of the United States culture for further attacks, for further assaults on civil liberties. We hadn't seen a damn thing yet. That was child's play. And Nico's completely correct. Everybody who was pushing back. Remember, I used the term science-y. You hear Fauci was being science-y. He wasn't being scientific. There's a difference. He was giving the illusion of having scientific authority in what he was saying, but he was full of shit, that guy. I mean, what a mental midget. A total insult to midgets everywhere. Right? This man was an abject liar in the name of science. And now in the aftermath, and if you think we're making this up, consider the Study and Applied Economics Journal, January 2022, volume 200. It's a meta-analysis, meaning an analysis of other analyses. 24 studies that looked at all the mandates that restricted a bunch of freedoms in some way or another as a result of COVID. So they looked at school and business closures, stay-at-home orders, travel bans, our favorite, face mask requirements.
Distancing, probably.
Yeah. And they found that these measures in the United States and Europe reduced deaths from COVID-19 by a whopping, breathtaking amount of 0.2%. Awesome. But look at the cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at the cost, man.
Yeah, the solution is worse than the remedy, right? I mean, then the problem is what I meant to say. 0.2%. Think about that. That is ridiculously low. But then if you look at the counter, the harm on the opposite side of it, it's way worse than that. I mean, when you're talking about drug addiction, suicides, depression. I mean,
not to mention
SAT scores, scholastics.
Being hurt from the vaccine. I think you sent those numbers.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball game, and you can look at
some point.
And that's separate. That's separate than the VAERS numbers, the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. I mean,
and that's only from the people that report
self-report. Yeah,
the CDC put out data on June 7th. It's their own data.
Right, but what I'm saying is, there's other ways to look. I encourage people, if you get a chance, if you haven't done it yet, it's on Twitter, of course. I don't know if I'm sure the whole thing's on Facebook too, but watch the interview. It's a 3-hour interview. You can do it at 1.5 speed or 1.25 speed or whatever. That's what I did. And I chipped away at it because I don't have 3 hours to sit down. And I just, over a day and a half, I chipped away at it. But I thought it was very good.
Which interview are you talking about?
Kennedy, Robert Kennedy.
Okay.
Bobby Kennedy is talking to Joe. And it's a good interview. Bobby's he's ridiculously informed. He gives his history and how he got into this space, his family history a little bit, what it's cost him, so to speak, from family relationships to business to how he's taken on environmental issues in the past and how he got into the vaccine space, and how he talks to Paul Offit and all these experts and how they avoid him like the plague, and him meeting with Tony Fauci and how President Trump was going to bring him in, like I've said on the show back in 2016, and he met with a couple of people, Del Bigtree and Aaron Siri, who's a lawyer, who's a very wise, a very intelligent lawyer. I know him personally. He's incredibly intelligent, and he does a lot of lawsuits. And so and they all met down with Fauci and some other people. And then it went to hell in a handbasket. It ended up going dark with them. Trump went dark on Bobby and didn't put him on that council after all, or that board or whatever.
I do think that was a huge mistake. My goodness.
Of course it was. I mean, because look what it led to, ultimately leading to Fauci and this whole thing about the COVID stuff. It's well informed. You know, Bobby has an issue with his throat. I don't remember the condition he has, but it happened years ago, and he's actually gotten better. It used to be worse. So the fact that he advocates so much with what he's dealing with, it's like somebody having to, in my opinion, as part of their advocacy or their profession, they have to run marathons, but they have one leg.
Yeah. He's
It's
driven
that
to
type
do
of
it.
it's that type of burden on him, because in the morning it's worse than it is in the evening. And he'll do interviews where he says, "Look, let my voice warm up. It'll get better as time goes on."
A
like
truly,
pitching a
true-
baseball without a
he's-
thumb.
Yeah, a truly impressive person. I mean, he
Bobby
really is.
is.
I mean, this is, and I think that the
Bobby
great
is,
and
yeah.
sad, and my heart breaks for him. Side irony is that his family has shunned him in many cases, and this is a Kennedy that graces the family, the Kennedy family. This guy actually graces the Kennedy family. He actually retrieves, in my view, recuperates, redeems some of the lost grandeur of that family. And so the very individual that I think does a credit to the family at this time is the individual that the family, who, and in my view, I think politically is almost to the left of Lenin. You know, this is a real sad shame. I think his uncle would be very proud of him, certainly his pop. You know,
But
good.
thank God, things like the Joe Rogan podcast and Twitter now
Big
with
platform.
Tucker Carlson. Thank
Massive
God
platform,
that they
yeah.
exist, because before they
Well-
wouldn't have even been able to say
Thank God,
things.
indeed.
You know, Joe Rogan woke up at some point. He talks about it on a different show. I don't watch his show on a regular basis. Only when people send a relevant topic to me. But thank God Joe woke up.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do, because and thank God he woke up when he had the platform instead of before. Look, talk
yeah.
about God's timing, and whether he knows it or not, I think the Lord is using him. And Bobby gives him credit. I mean, he's a corner. I mean, Joe's a big deal. I mean, on communicating to a certain genre, he really is.
To millions.
Millions, and then after, I mean, not just live, but then also just his influence. Period. And he has an inquisitive mind. You know, Bobby compliments him on his curiosity, which undergirds, in my opinion, I had never heard it said that way, or that point being made up, undergirds free thought. It's really the curious mind. It's like, I wonder if you did this instead of this, and let's critically think through that. It's the curiosity that lets you think freely, and it's the curiosity that allows those thoughts freedom to roam and pasteurize, and then to express them. I mean, think about that. So, and I sense that in Joe. I mean, yeah, at times he was kind of sarcastic. I think he was a very open atheist. He's not. I don't believe what I've seen. I'm not saying he's a Christian by any means, but you know, I don't believe he's an atheist at all. But he's got that curiosity, and I think, and it's interesting because it's not dynamic all the time. Sometimes it's just this. I mean, just people talking in their silence. They just kind of talk through things, and then they'll look stuff up on the internet when they're trying to confirm stuff. And I love the way Bobby's style is. Guys, don't trust me. Look it up, and then they'll look it up. And it's like, oh shit, you know, Bobby's right. I mean, this is the situation with Wi-Fi or whatever else they're talking about, or different issues, and even with vaccines and thimerosal and mercury. And so I love that about Joe. I really do. I think it's wonderful that he does that. And then if Elon Musk, can you guys imagine if he didn't buy Twitter? And good for. I hope
my
Elon
God,
does
yes.
well with it. I really do. Not just because I hope the Lord blesses him, whether he receives it from God or not. But Elon Musk, I think, will go down in history. Tell me if I'm being too much, George. Give me your opinion. As saving free speech, as a big catalyst in doing that. Because Twitter now, I mean, is known for, I mean, Tucker's on Twitter for a reason. He didn't get on there for no, I mean, you can put things on there. It's a huge platform now. I think it's going to take over YouTube.
Yeah, he calls himself a free speech absolutist. I don't know that he's a free speech absolutist. I mean, he's still allowing some things to be censored on
Right,
Twitter.
yeah. I saw that.
I think the absolutist is a bit of a stretch, but I think your point is valid. I mean, not to mention, he's done some truly unprecedented things in the world of business. I mean, the guy he's a walking bank.
People joke
You know?
though when he
He's
said, "I'm
just
going to buy
innovative.
Twitter." I mean, people joke. He's
Yeah.
like, "What do you
Well, he
mean
also
you're going to
joked
buy
when he said, "I'm
Twitter?"
going to go to space."
I
mean, the
they're
guys-
not laughing anymore.
No.
I mean, look, the absolutist. I always say I'm almost a free speech absolutist, right? But I mean, we've got to allow that curiosity of the mind to be expressed in your thoughts. And again, I think we've seen it over and over again. The court of public opinion will give you their verdict. They will. I mean, they'll convict you to the corner of insignificance because you have a shitty idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the good idea, and the only reason, as you've heard me say, Karen, the only reason why you know that someone has a good idea is because you allowed the person to share the crappy idea.
Absolutely.
What do you compare it to? What idea are you comparing to? Well, everything sounds like a great idea. Trust the experts. That's what Bobby and Joe talk about, right, Jeff? They trust the experts. So, okay, well, I deal with that. That's why for me, that never flew. You get two opposing sides, whether it's the government and defense, or whether it's the petitioner and the respondent, if it's in a civil case, and everybody's bringing in experts and with great CVs and all these credentials. And it's like, well, your expert sucks. Well, your expert sucks. Well, I got two experts say you're two experts. Well, I got three experts. And it's a battle of the experts. And they're all experts, but they have very different conclusions. So that just didn't fly to trust the experts. We've got to be able to challenge the experts and question expertise, because maybe you're not really an expert because nobody's really challenged you. If you can't hold up. So in the court of law, there's something called the 702, 705 Daubert hearing. And it's when you can challenge and you can have that outside the jury's presence before someone can testify as an expert. You can request a Daubert hearing to question their expertise on their skill, knowledge, education, experience, and training. You can challenge their expertise. And then the judge can say, like, well, you can testify, but you can't testify as an expert because no, you're not. And then you strategically want to determine whether you want to do that in front of a jury, outside of a jury, because you might want to make the expert look like shit. But all that to say is, you've got to be able to challenge experts, George and Karen, Jeff. I mean, everybody out there. You can't just, even with doctors, with whomever, lawyers. I mean, I don't tell someone, well, I'm the expert. I'd say, okay, well, I can learn from anybody. I learn from you. I can learn from anybody. I'll stop learning the day I stand before the Lord. Even in my field of quote unquote expertise.
Absolutely.
There's nobody that knows everything.
Right.
And so we've gotten to this point where, well, you're an expert. You're wearing a lab coat. You're wearing this title. You have these letters behind your name.
And look where it got us.
And look where it got us. It got us into the shithole that we're in right now. And I think people need to repent from that. I really do, humbly.
Yeah, but I mean, if this isn't encouraged, if this isn't our political model, which has been our political model since the founding of the country, we've not always championed it effectively, but we've always championed it. And whether we champion, we always say, don't look at the worst representative of a worldview or a political model and then blame the political model on them, because you got to look at the actual political model.
And
you got to look at the worldview for what it is.
Don't judge an ideology by its abuse.
Certainly not by its worst,
my God,
by its
yes.
worst
Yes.
representatives. So, if this isn't the model going forward, what do you think the model is? It gets pretty violent pretty quickly. This is not going to be a cold war.
This is true.
This is going to be a hot war. It's
Listen to
cold until it's hot.
Karen, listen to what George is saying. Because if people, and I'm not encouraging this, I'm discouraging it by saying that we need to be able to freely think, be curious, and ask questions and express thought. If people feel to get to a point where they feel I have no other choice, I can't do anything
And
else.
they're trying to do that.
And I can't trust our institutions. And we can't trust the ideas and the system set up for me to express my grievances and to get some reprieve from it. And to have, then people feel like the only thing they can do is to do something physical, which is wrong. We don't want that. I don't want another physical civil war. I don't mind having the civil war of ideas, but then give us the structure to air them out and let there be a winner.
I want to, because we're always talking about the people on the fence, and I want to give credit to what I think is a stunning development in my view. I don't know if you guys know DeRoy Murdoch. He's a Fox News contributor. This guy is no ardent Trump supporter. Smart guy, very articulate, and has a lot of intelligent things to say. He also happens to be a Black American, and he's been, I think, in my view, reasonably tepid on Trump. He tries to be very fair, very fair in his analysis. Here's an article he put out this week called "The Left Can't Be Negotiated With." This is not the kind of article I would expect from DeRoy Murdoch. The left can't be negotiated with. It must be fought and defeated. And then he goes on and he makes because people always say, well, what do we do from now? And he wrote, how can law and order Americans respect people who see shoplifters, carjackers, violent hoodlums, and even murderers, and either ignore their crimes or, if they're arrested, speed their return to the streets so they can resume their criminal careers? And he goes on to say, no wonder rightists rightly chant, no more Mr. Nice Guy. The only answer is to crush them. Democrat leftists, and he points that out, are beyond convincing. The most elegant conservative arguments glide off their heads like raindrops rolling across an umbrella. This is the kind of thing you would see a David Horowitz write. This is not the kind of thing you would see Leroy Murdoch. If you think he's alone, you're nuts. But he writes insightfully.
But why is he writing
says,
that?
Because of the issues that were a collapse
when
of
the
an
pain
order.
of staying the same exceeds the pain
just
of...
thinking
Go, George,
that,
finish your
yes.
thoughts. Sorry.
And he says the left must be vanquished at every election. These are fighting words, man. Crush, vanquish. He says that conservative victories must then yield vengeance. And then he elaborates, uproot the left's programs, defund their every subsidy, arrest those who have committed crimes, much of Antifa and Black Lives Matter. In Trump's words, he's quoting Trump as a precedent for moving forward. It's Leroy Murdoch. The quote, thugs, misfits, and Marxists at the FBI and Department of Justice who perpetrated the endless Russia hoax must be fired, disbarred, stripped of their law licenses. And if they broke federal law, tried, and if convicted, imprisoned for years. The teachers' unions, and this is a big deal, must be destroyed. Their media bodyguards must be challenged relentlessly, shamed into telling the truth, and circumvented via robust and aggressive alternative media. The evil left, and I would agree with that. I'm only throwing around words like evil, but when you're talking about a Democrat, communist, leftist mindset, it is absolutely evil because it destroys human beings, it devalues them, it diminishes them, and it actually deletes them. It erases them. They're going after, as you said, thoughts. This is going after your thinking. If you lose your thinking, you lose your personhood. That will take toughness. Trump has the necessary guts. This is a fence sitter, politically, in my view. Ron DeSantis might. Sunshine Tim Scott probably does not. Mike turn the other cheek Pence surely does not. And by the way, Mike Pence, in a hot moment, is the kind of guy, separating what happened at J6, and I've known a lot in my life, who will throw you under the bus.
100%.
Okay?
100%.
Watch out
Yeah.
for the weird smirk he puts on and the pretentious, I'm so gracious. Be careful with that. And he said, and Leroy Murdoch says, this problem cannot get prayed away. The antidote to American evil is hard-headedness that supersedes the gentle persuasion that Reed, yours truly, Lawrence Reed is another commentator who is in the same boat as he. And he said, he's talking about himself, yours truly. The gentle persuasion that yours truly and so many other conservatives have practiced for decades. Those methods stopped Hubert Humphrey, Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale, Joe Lieberman, Dick Gephardt, and their kind, but such Democrats are as obsolete as an 8-track tape.
Damn.
I mean,
Send that to me.
it will.
I know,
it will
that is
take far
strong.
more stringent but peaceful. Interesting how he's trying to make clear.
He's using, it sounds like he's using war terminology to ideas and putting things away. Look, to his point, everything you just read, that was excellent. Send me that piece, please. I mean, I'd like to share it with
May
some
I say
folks.
one last sentence and
Yes,
then shut
please,
up
please,
for a
please.
moment?
No,
Okay,
go
because
ahead.
he calls out names.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It will take far more stringent but peaceful measures to neutralize Patrice Cullors. We know who that is. That's BLM. Ibrahim X. Kendi, who's a truly Marxist piece of shit, who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist, where he actually teaches you how to be as racial as possible. Randy Weingarten, who is the head of the American Teachers Union. Merrick Garland, I think he needs no elaboration. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, and their comrades. This is Leroy Murdoch. He's calling them comrades as a clear and present danger to the American Republic. Evil is on the loose. His his buddy Lawrence Reed warns, do not be depressed by this fact, for a defeatist spirit will fatally disarm you, and that is precisely what evil wants. The last thing evil desires is an informed citizenry eager to resist. It is not inevitable that evil should win unless good people give up. I'll shut up.
No, but man, I didn't even read the whole damn article, and that was impressive. I mean, I want to please. Well, send it to me. Well, send it to me, please. Well, what you read out of there, what he mentioned about the Russian hoax, we keep kind of going over that lightly. That was a big deal. You have to understand what that was. These are people that lied.
That's right.
Under oath.
Yep.
They got search warrants. You want to talk about obstruction and abuse of authority, prosecutorial misconduct. Falsifying, I'm sure, governmental records. It's just horrible. And then you have the media. Forget about the media. And then Schiff, which I can't believe those 20 Republicans didn't vote. I mean, this goes to Hewley's, or what's his name?
DeRoy Murdoch?
Murdoch, sorry. DeRoy Murdoch. His point about not having the gumption or the ganas, as we say, to do anything about it. There has to be consequences. The reason why the left continues to do this shit is because there's no consequences.
Right.
Whether it's being called out and not being able to work in the dark, whether it's being exposed to who you are, whether it's being voted out of office, or whether it's being prosecuted, whatever it is, whatever's appropriate. Not everything's the same. I'm not hyperbolic in my response. We've got to be metered justice. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is not a revenge passage. It's a metered justice passage.
But Nico, they've corrupted the institutions through which consequences can come.
I got that.
Right?
You're right, but I'm just saying that we need a metered response. And maybe it's harsh at times because you have to respond to it, but this needs to be rooted out. This needs to be gutted out. It truly does. The ideology, but it's not just going to end if you get all these people on his list. It's not going to end there because the citizenry has already been indoctrinated. Mm-hmm. So we've got to do twofold. You got to get rid of the people in charge at top, vote them out, get rid of them, hold them accountable, whatever it means, whether it's ethically or legally, whatever's appropriate for the circumstance. They're not all in the same boat. And then we have to try to rebuild and rejuvenate the spirit of this country. Yes, to talk about, to
educate the followers of that.
Deconstruct. You hear about the deconstruction in the Christian world, right? Jeff talks about that a lot with us offline. But when you talk about deconstructing my ways of thinking, and that's where this progressive Christian movement comes from, they talk about deconstructing the old Christian bad ways, which you really don't understand them if you're going to call them bad ways. Or if somebody's abusing them, then they're an asshole. They're not a true Christian. But then we have to deconstruct people from this indoctrination. So it's a twofold effect. We have to vote and educate ourselves and make our voices heard and persuade people to vote people out of office, get the right people in office to hold people accountable accordingly, and then deconstruct the mindset. And we have to start with our young people too.
Can I just say real quick, we're gonna post that article you just mentioned a moment ago on the comments for Facebook, YouTube, and everything, so everyone can read
Go to
it.
dailysignal.com. They're the media arm. Absolutely, yeah.
We'll post it on the comments.
They're the media arm for the Heritage Foundation. The left can't be negotiated with. It must be fought and defeated. DeRoy Murdoch, June 16th, 2023. Very impressive. I think he literally takes the words out of my mouth, and he was just so very eloquent, and he's spot on. But it's this type of individual. For him to come out that forcefully and to set aside, because he says yours truly, because that the gentler, kinder, those are arrows in a quiver that's outdated. Your opponent has changed, and the GOP for a long time hasn't been updating their arsenal. And he's talking rhetorically.
Why did he make the comment about Tim Scott? I don't think Tim Scott's right for the job right now. I think he needs to be. I think it's a good
Tim
voice.
Scott says a lot of truthful things. I just don't know that he has. I don't know that he has the fighting spirit.
No.
I think he needs to be trained up a little bit more, and I think he got a good taste of it on The View. I mean, I saw a little video someone sent me. I thought he did a good job. I love that he went on The View. And it
took courage to do that, and he has courage.
He's got courage, man. I like Tim Scott.
But I don't. But
I think he should be on a cabinet.
But he's not going to scrap. He's not going to get in the dirt.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know yet until you get punched. He hasn't been punched really yet.
He's gonna get punched.
All right, the jury's still out on that. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But look, I don't think there's any doubt that Trump's ready, willing, and able to jump into the.
Look, I mean, the bottom line is, based off what this guy is saying, what he's advocating for is we need Trump for 4 more years.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
exactly
reading.
it.
And I can't wait to read the article, the whole article. But this to me is an apologetic point. Apologia, meaning to give an answer, right? A defense. So this is the Apostle Paul, used to be Saul of Tarsus, became an apologist and an evangelist for the Christian movement when he was persecuting Christians and pulling people away from Christ. What happened to him? We had an experience with Christ on the road to Damascus.
You bet.
This seems like this
Acts
guy
chapter 9.
has got the road to Damascus type political thing. He's like, I don't care if I like Trump or not. What we're up against is overwhelming. We need that battering ram with the buffy hair and the orange skin to go and beat the shit out of the other side. And then hopefully we'll train up other people that mature in their political skin and then can take the mantle of the ideas. I take issue with people saying MAGA or conservative. Just say conservative. What the hell does a MAGA conservative mean? We've talked about that before, and we read the list of what a MAGA conservative: borders, gender issues, a boy's a boy, a girl's a girl, parent have rights, fiscal conservativeness, strong international positions. I mean, we read the list. I can look for it. It's on my notes. But I'll get it before we get off the air. But that's not a MAGA. There's MAGA Democrats then. Bobby Kennedy's a MAGA Democrat. If you read the list that I've read, I don't know how many months ago, and I'll look for it really, you guys keep talking, but there's MAGA Democrats out there. And Bobby's got 20% of the Democrat Party that are MAGA Democrats.
You bet. Yeah.
So I think we need to cut this bullshit about it's not about Trump. It's about ideas that he's championing or that he's battering ramming in or trying to defend.
Yes.
But so I just think we need to not play that game about MAGA Republicans versus Republicans or conservatives.
There's a couple of nuggets at the intro. He references Lawrence Reed.
I like Lawrence.
And he's a good man. Lawrence Reed wrote essentially the same piece. But DeRoy followed up, and I thought he added more oomph to it. So Lawrence Reed wrote an essay for the Foundation for Economic Education. He cites it. DeRoy Murdoch cites it here. And he says, hey, Lawrence Reed, my friend Lawrence Reed, is one of Earth's biggest optimists.
Lawrence is?
Yes. And for Lawrence Reed to have written that piece, he wrote a different piece. He wrote, evil is rising, but despair is not an option. And so he described what DeRoy Murdoch calls a volcano of evil in American culture, and he puts that largely on the shoulders of the Democrat left. And so he I mean, it was just it's just a takedown, and he goes piece by piece by piece, talking about how these individuals, every time they're bitching, they're doing exactly what they're bitching. So that's one important piece that we think you guys should read. Let me also recommend, I know Nico and I wanted to get into this with you, Karen, but we just ran out of time. Leah Barkokis has written a great piece commenting and evaluating Tucker Carlson's, which you sent to us, video. And the theme of the video was wannabe, what was it?
A wannabe dictator.
A wannabe dictator. And he got that from a Chiron that flashed on Fox News briefly, 30 seconds. We later found out that the Fox News producer who actually put it up there was fired.
He worked there for 13 years.
What a piece of shit organization, man.
Right.
Fox News, my gosh, man, they can just kiss my ass. Yep. Wannabe dictator speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested. This is the Chiron that flashed on Fox News for less than 30 seconds, right? And of course, it pissed off a bunch of people. And no, they're not conservatives. Shocker of shockers. And so Carlson went on and he talked about, very sarcastically but very effectively, how Joe Biden is actually a dictator by using reverse language. And this is a great piece. She wrote, what are the traits of a wannabe dictator? Tucker Carlson's monologue Holds Nothing Back by Leah Barkokis, Barkoukis, on townhall.com. She wrote this yesterday, and it was posted. You guys need to read this. Let me give you one of my favorites that Tucker Carlson wrote. Quote, of course, Joe Biden is not a wannabe dictator. I mean, just because he's trying to put the other candidate in prison for the rest of his life for a crime he himself committed. That doesn't mean he has a totalitarian impulse. Come on. I mean, that's absurd. Jailing your political rivals. I mean, come on. I mean, that doesn't make him a wannabe dictator. I was referring to Leah Barkokas, who wrote about Tucker's monologue on townhall.com.
It was really good.
It's a great piece. I was just giving an example of how he very sarcastically totally deconstructed this notion that Joe Biden is the farthest thing from
the family members
from a
was
dictator.
What really made me laugh, because he'd have pictures.
And then he went through family member corruptions, and he went through really the manipulation of American bureaucracy, to pursue political gain, self-enrichment, which is really what every dictator does. I mean, a very sobering piece. They should listen to Tucker Carlson on this. I mean, it's just so beautifully done. I was telling Nico and Kara, I'm jealous. If I ever wrote a piece, because I don't mind a little bit of sarcasm, I would have written it exactly the way he did it and communicated it the way that he did it too.
Yeah, he did a good job. I just wanted to, I had to run to the restroom, but here's the extreme MAGA agenda that I read months ago. I just couldn't get. I wanted to make sure, because I think we need to stop. We need to stop the MAGA conservative versus the conservative. What's the difference? Because this is the MAGA conservative. Secure your borders. Man, sounds extreme. Fair elections. Those are MAGA Democrats, right? Tracy Abrams and Hillary Clinton, a bunch of people. Energy independence. Wow, that's extreme. Tough on crime. Okay. Save babies. Stop genital mutilation of kids. Put parents first. School choice. Protect constitutional rights. Put America first. What's so extreme?
Yeah.
What's so extreme about that?
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I'm
totally
saying,
excessive.
I mean, we've got to stop falling for the bait of this labeling bullshit. I mean, there's MAGA Democrats that believe, I promise you that. I don't know what Bobby would disagree with on that. He may think that parents have a right. I don't know where his position is on abortion. He's a strong Catholic. I mean, he's a Catholic Christian. But I don't know. He's going to put out his agenda, I think, coming up on the 20th of this month, and I'll be watching it.
Look, I'll be honest. If I had 10 minutes with Bobby and he and I were just having a tit for tat, we could just do a little intellectual jousting. I would challenge him on his ardent positions in terms of the climate crisis.
Sure.
I mean, he does cross the line in my view. I mean, I think he's a really data-driven guy. And I wonder if at some point in the future, Nico, he might.
Where does he cross the line for you?
No, I mean, I think he believes that there's an actual crisis.
Well, I've never heard him say that, so I don't know. If you have, then I'll listen to it. He started in mercury and water and polluted water. I mean, that's where his advocacy started on and the cases he's handled. I mean, look at Michigan, Flint, Michigan. People get sick. You can die if you have crappy water. I mean, so and people were swimming in the river, and you couldn't fish anymore and eat your fish. I mean, your fish was contaminated. Forget about it. Just fish and throw it back or throw it away. And so that's kind of where he started a lot of his advocacy points. And so, yes, he's in environmental issues. I've never heard him take the positions of the hypocrite Al Gore and all these other idiots.
No, he's not a hypocrite.
Getting rid of the stoves and the cars.
Absolutely not. That's one thing Kennedy is not. He's no Al Gore. Al Gore's a piece of shit. But I mean,
I'm not saying you were saying that.
But no, Kennedy's. I think he's a man of integrity, and I think when he holds positions, he holds informed positions, makes excellent arguments. He's a tough debater. I mean, he knows his shit. He does. He's done his research, and he's surrounded himself with people that are a fantastic analytical team, great research team. I mean, he's got the likes of Mary Holland working with him. I mean, she's fantastic. She's an NYU researcher. She's done yeoman's work. She's the best, I think, the best book out there on what she calls, it's called the vaccine. I think it's a vaccine epidemic, is written by her, and she, I think she's
smart lady.
Yeah. I mean, she looks at the data very, very handily, and she looks at the legal aspects of it, the constitutional concerns, and she does better than anybody else. An excellent takedown of the conflicts of interest, really, between vaccine forces, pro-vaccine forces, and pharma. So anyway, I've got a lot about Kennedy that I like, but I want you guys to go to Children's Health Defense.
Oh yeah.
.org.
Yep.
That's his website. It is a trove of excellent information, not just on vaccines, but I think that he goes on and on about what I would call a climate crisis, and those terms are used there. I mean, there's one piece here from 21 that I have. 12 major central banks continue to fuel climate crisis.
Was he defending them or is he criticizing them on that?
No, I think his argument is that institutions don't do enough.
Oh, got it.
To push back on imminent climate crisis
Look, we all have
concerns,
our
which I
blind
would
spots,
part with him.
I mean,
handily on that.
I don't know, and I'm not. I'll let the experts argue that out. Obviously the climate is changing, but whether it's man-induced or not, I mean, we had an ice age at one point, and then we don't anymore. And there was no industry back then, so obviously the climate changes as time goes on, and the climate's going to ultimately change when the Lord, ends everything. But all that to say, look, I mean, we just want to wish everyone a happy Father's Day again.
Happy Father's
Happy
Day to
Daddy's
both
Day.
of you.
Amen.
Both of you.
See that, and then Jeff's working on being a daddy, I'm sure. But so, but it's a big deal. I pray that the true daddies out there are honored this weekend because we need more of them in conjunction, of course, in collaboration with mommies working together to raise children up, as we said in Proverbs 22:6. So God bless you. Happy Father's Day. Happy Daddy's Day.